Man's Higher Consciousness, lesson number 5. If you would like to catch up, you maybe just came to this video and you're interested in hearing the so-called audio version of this book, which is really just me commentating, reading and commentating as I go along. There is a playlist called Man's Higher Consciousness on this channel. So go to the channel, playlists, Man's Higher Consciousness. I got all the previous lessons. Let's get on with it. Lesson number 5. Body changes. Man ceaselessly overcomes the difficulties and dangers of the outside world. He accommodates himself to the changing conditions of his environment. The body seems to mold itself on events. Instead of wearing out, it changes. Our organs always improvise means of meeting every new situation, and these means are such that they tend to give us a direction of the longest survival. These statements by one of the great scientists of the age, so far as living organisms are concerned, mean much more than many understand. By reason of the perfection of the body and of the power of vital adjustment possessed by it, a power little understood by the greatest scientist, man has been able to survive through the ages in spite of his changing environment and his evil habits. So all it is in spite of all the evil doings and the evil habits, we managed to survive, but the compromise is a rapidly decreasing lifespan coupled with a life of dis-ease and pain. You disobey cosmic laws, you pay the price. Simple, seemingly simple. It is actually pretty simple. Anyway, by reason of the perfection of the body and of the power of vital adjustment possessed by it, a power little understood by greatest scientists, man has been able to survive through the ages in spite of his changing environment and his evil habits. The toll taken through the ages by the evils and dangers thus thrust upon the body has been a deterioration of the body's organs and structures that has reduced its duration from a period that probably once covered nearly 100,000 years to that of much less than 1 century in modern times. I wonder how familiar was Hotima with the cycles, the Yuga cycles in Hinduism. Because in the Yuga cycles, there's 4 cycles, and they say time is cyclical. They say that the age of enlightenment, also known in Sanskrit as Satya or Satyuga, they say the lifespan was 100,000 years. But I don't think they're the only ones that say that. I believe the Egyptians had similar ideas, and that's why they were shooting for immortality. So this isn't exclusive just to the Hindu scriptures. 100,000. 100,000. That's our lifespan in our perfected state. Misleading the multitude. Modern institutions attempt to conceal the facts of human degeneration by deception, by the destruction of ancient records, and by leading people to believe that the race is progressing, moving upward, and that man now stands at the very pinnacle of his earthly career, that his scope of knowledge is greater than the race has ever before possessed. There is not a scrap of evidence to support these claims. They are empty and misleading. They fall before every impartial investigation and do much damage and no good. They weaken all desire to live a better life and discredit those who present the facts. They constrain the multitude to regard and treat as an enemy any teacher who would show the way back to the better life, making it dangerous to expose fraud and advocate race improvement. The elements of time and tear have no effect on the living body. The turning of the earth on its axis means nothing. to a body that is repaired and renewed every minute of its existence. Dismiss. The body neither ages nor wears, but it weakens. The cause of the weakness include man's hostile environment, his harmful habits, and medical treatment. So medical treatment, vaccines, and all the pharmaceuticals, harmful habits, your basically food, the biggest harmful habit humans are indulged in, and our hostile environment. I'll tell you, I live in a beautiful island, and every evening between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., the people who live around, the locals, start to burn things, burn trash, and just burn crops and stuff like that. It's a common thing in Thailand, and in actually many parts of many areas of this part of the region, this region of the world. And like for 3-4 hours, the air is just foul. Like yesterday I was outside and I came back here, and it's like, even you go to beautiful places and still the way humans treat themselves and their surroundings is just absurd and ridiculous. That's why I'm all up in the off-grid project, because I realized, the only way is to just go back to nature. Anyway, where are we? Carl seemed to disregard habits and medical treatment. He saw only the difficulties and dangers of the outside world. He is right in holding that a hostile environment is enough to weaken the body and send it to the grave. But the difficulties and dangers of man's habits and medical treatment are often more injurious than those of the external world. As a result of the inimical conditions to which it is subjected and the injurious substances that enter its receiving chambers, so the air organs in the stomach, the body changes instead of wearing out, as Carroll says. The body changes may be briefly considered under 3 main heads. Number 1, a change in the organs and glands ruled by the law of vital adjustment, which we talked about in lesson 4, causing changes in their functions, and a change in the quality of the cells and tissues. By this course, the body gently sinks into a slow process of degeneration instead of dying suddenly, giving the body a maximum duration under the circumstances, because it is able to change, as Carroll says. The changes in the body's organs and glands under the law of vital adjustment cause some of them to fall below par and in time lapse into a state of dormancy or semi-dormancy. The others must increase in size and function to compensate for this loss, putting a strain on them as the body struggles to survive under handicaps it is forced to face. Number 2, the changes in function resulting from the change in organs and glands are numerous and are for the worse. A condition of slow deterioration sets in, and its symptoms are what doctors are trained to term disease. In time, these changes appear as diabetes, Bright's disease, arthritis, neuritis, lumbago, whatever, and so on through the entire list of diseases. The change in the quality of the cells and tissues appear in that condition of weakness known as old age, where and when the activity and elasticity of youth are succeeded by the slowness and stiffness of this servitude. So this adaptability that humans have is why if you do a fast and then you go back to eating, you'll find that the first few days you can barely eat, because your stomach actually goes back to its natural size, which is the size of a fist. And then you eat for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and by a week of eating, you're back to your old habits, because your stomach now just adjusted, law of vital adjustment, so you could just give you the maximum time to go on, maximum survivability under the horrendous conditions anyway. So it'll adapt, it'll expand. It'll just expand in size, and then you're obviously putting a lot of stress on it, just like a muscle. You put it under stress, it expands in size. Same thing with your organs. But once you reset them back through fasting, you realize how little you can eat to begin with before the vital adjustment mechanism kicks in. And then you could eat more, which is you're just putting on more stress, really. You're just aging quicker, that's all. Oof, okay. Part of me wants to get to lesson 6 because it's really profound. Anyway, this is profound too. Okay. Must not look ahead, must stay in the present moment. Harmful practices from birth. The changes are not the work of time and terror, but of harmful habits, a hostile environment, and that medical treatment which begins after the babe is born, as vaccination and inoculation to make the body disease-proof, and is continued all through life. The body is poisoned and weakened at the start, begins its decline into degeneration immediately, and is never given an opportunity to recover. As the organs and glands become dormant or semi-dormant, the body and its functions change in its adaptation to evil influences that reduce much of its integrity, and efficiency, and it loses much of its spiritual capacity and faculty to function on the spiritual plane. Shout out to South Park. The evidence of this loss is most apparent in the brain, and proof of this loss is found in the institutions of civilization that are filled with the insane and feeble-minded. It is common knowledge that civilized man is mentally only 10% of what he should be, and the few on earth still sufficiently sane to see the light are those who are jailed and liquidated on charges of obstructing social progress by exposing their social pattern. Man as a breatharian received all his sustenance of the cosmos, all the substance of the cosmos directly through his air, organs, and thus functioned on the spiritual plane while dwelling in the material world. His spiritual capacity and faculty to function on the spiritual plane failed in direct ratio as his body changed and became more material through the internal changes suffered by his organs as a result of the body's adapting itself to the evil influences which it could not control and which it was forced to endure or die. In the perfect state of breatharianism, man's body was free of the clogging and dulling substances of the material world, and it must be free again of these damaging substances before it can return to its perfect state, when man was competent to explore with his mind the spiritual universe and possessed actual knowledge of the fact that he is of that kingdom and has eternal life. But one should not court danger by trying to return to breatharianism too quickly. That's very important. In his present degenerate state, man's body is afflicted with all the cumulative effects of his harmful habits, his hostile environment, and the poisons introduced into his body by the doctors. That is the change, as Carroll called it, which we know as the shocking stage wherein man's physical organism sinks into the stage termed old age. He is taught to expect it as his body wears out. On the contrary, the best doctors declare that the body does not and cannot wear out and is so perfect as a machine that it should go on forever. Okay, let's keep going here. Make sure the focus is spot on. All right. Man, it's like the situation here. It's funny. The situation here is pretty much like going to a parallel Earth where everybody shoots heroin 3 times a day, and you go into that planet and it's like that's normal, that's what people do. It's like what's for breakfast? Well, here, just put a needle in there, shoot heroin. What's for breakfast? What's for lunch? What's for dinner? And then you come in and you say, well, you guys, if you remove that, I mean, that's causing you all this problems, these health problems you have. If you don't do that no more, you're gonna experience increased health and vitality. And everybody looks at you and they burn you just at the stake, because everybody in that planet, that's what they do. It's normal. It's like the same thing here. Eating all foods, by the way. Fruits are not an exception here. It's the same thing. It's a drug. It is a drug no different than heroin. And it's just normalized. And it's causing us to die early. And it's causing us all kinds of diseases. The worst toxin to put in the body is food. It's food. Okay. Like, this gets more obvious as I keep reading. It's like duh. Okay. I'm gonna skip a little part here. It's not that relevant. You know what? I don't like saying that because everything. I'm gonna read it out of admiration and respect to the man, Hilton Hotima. Fewer centenarians. As evidence of the progress of degeneration, Royal Copland MD formed 50 years ago. There was a population of little more than 50 million people in the United States, 4,000 of whom were centenarians, people who live above 100. At the present time, with more than double the population of 50 years ago, there are only 2,000 people who have reached the age of 100. Dr. John Harvey wrote, "Civilized man is dying. This melancholy fact is recognized by all students of anthropology. Such eminent economists as Major Darwin, son of the famous Charles Darwin, and Professor Davenport of Carnegie Institution, consider the case hopeless and believe that man will ultimately become extinct through degeneration." Max Handel, an author of note in writing on man's past evolution, present constitution and the future development, attempts to show in his book Under the Science of Nutrition that disreptitude and death result from a change in the body's organs, structures, and tissues because of what man eats and drinks. He ignores the difficulties and dangers of the outside world, which Carroll saw and failed to notice, the wholesale manner in which the race is being poisoned. Heindel wrote, "There is a gradual increase in density and firmness of bones, tendons, cartilages, ligaments, tissues, membranes, the coverings, and even the very substance of the stomach, liver, lungs, and other organs. The joints become rigid and dry. They begin to crack and grate when they are moved because the synovial fluid which oils and softens them is diminished in quantity and rendered too thick and glutinous to serve that purpose. The heart, the brain, and the entire muscular system, spinal cord, nerves, eyes, etc., partake of the same consolidating process, growing more and more rigid. Millions upon millions of the minute capillary vessels, which ramify and spread like the branches of a tree throughout the entire body, gradually choke up and change into a solid fiber, no longer pervious to blood. The larger blood vessels, both arteries and veins, indurate, lose their elasticity, grow smaller, and become incapable of carrying the required amount of blood. The fluids of the body thicken and become putrid, loaded with earthy matter. The skin withers and grows wrinkled and dry. The hair falls for lack of oil. The teeth decay and drop out for lack of gelatin. The motor nerves begin to dry up and the body's movements become awkward and slow. The senses fail. The circulation of the blood is retarded. It stagnates and congeals in the vessels. More and more, the body loses its former power. Once elastic, healthy, alert, pliable, active, and sensitive, it changes and becomes rigid, slow, and insensible. Finally, it dies of old age. Medical art says the body wears out. Carroll says it changes. Given above is a good description of the more apparent changes. From the changes listed, many others occur that are less noticeable and harder to describe. It is unnatural for the body thus to change, and the changes do not come of their own accord. The body battles against them, but they are forced upon the body by the persistence of a hostile environment and a man's harmful habits. So, I was at one point in my life really big into fitness, what we call fitness, bodybuilding and stuff like that. I guess I have the ancient runes, ancient remains, which is a big, pecs here, and so that caused a lot of acidity. Like I was constantly tense. My neck was. I would always strain my neck at least once a week. I had like a thing where I'd strain it. You know those strains where you just hurts to look this way, right? And so I'd strain it. It takes about 4 or 5 days, and then 4 or 5 days later I'd strain it again. But it wasn't just that, because that creates acidity, right? The resistance training with weights It creates acidity, lactic acid, right? In the body. Acidity is what causes degeneration. But also, I was eating a diet full of meats and heavy, dense foods. I was eating like a big, giant salmon, like this big, every single day, and eggs. And before that, a big chicken, before I decided to do pescatarian. And then, and I only stopped about a year ago of making this video, a little over a year since I stopped eating meat and been lighting up the diet. And funnily enough, I used to do so much stretching because I was always so tense, and the stretching didn't do that much. Now I don't stretch because I'm looser. There's a more elasticity in the body. I don't stretch. I don't remember the last time I stretched because the need isn't there. I don't feel inclined to stretch. Trust me, I hate feeling tense. I used to stretch so much because of the tension. I don't like it. If I feel tense, I will stretch. But I don't really feel tense anymore because I stopped eating these foods, these acid-forming foods, for the most part. I still eat from time to time, not meat, but like bread and starches from time to time. But for the most part now, like diet, sort of half liquid juices, fruit juices, and the other half, maybe like an avocado or fruit, or sometimes potatoes. I know they're denser foods, starches, but you know what the bottom line is, consistently I've been lightening up the diet and lightening up the load overall. I just do body weight stuff, body weight, so it doesn't really cause acidity. Very, very minimal. I don't remember the last time I stretched, and it is because I don't feel like I need to stretch because I don't feel the tension. It's still there, mind you. I know I'm far, far from ultimate elasticity. Believe me, I know I'm far, far from it, and I'm sure progressively as I continue on the breatharian path, I'll be like, holy shit, like I probably feel like I'm gonna levitate or something. But yeah, that's essentially what was being described here. All this stress and tension you have, and the need to stretch yourself out, is because you're full of acidity, which at least 50% of it is being caused by food. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Okay. Rudimentary organs. The great Carroll, in his work Man the Unknown, wrote, "The body seems to mold itself on events. Instead of wearing out, it changes. Instead of dying, it changes, it degenerates." We have described some body changes in the foregoing pages, showing how and why the body sinks into degeneration and death. There is another phase of the subject to which we shall now refer. On page 197, Carroll said that the body's intelligence possesses both a prevision and a provision. It perceives the remote and the near, the future and the present. It provides by definite changes for such conditions and emergencies as its provision shows that it must meet or perish. Carroll failed, for some reason, to proceed from there and present some evidence of changes which the body makes and has made in order to survive under new conditions that prevailed not at the time when man first came into physical being. Had he done so, he would have uncovered some strange and startling things. Could Carroll, as a doctor, see the present rudimentary organs, that's your digestive system, and glands in the body, and not understand that they must have been useful and functional at some early period in man's life? These rudimentary structures must represent changes the body has made in its struggle to survive under adverse conditions. Could Carroll view the stomach and intestines in modern man and not realize that they were rudimentary structures in the days when man was a complete breatharian? With that evil disorder, constipation, so prevalent that it's termed the national disorder, and with few folks free of hemorrhoids, I remember hemorrhoids a few years back, not very pretty, of stomach and bowel troubles, with thousands suffering from appendicitis and many dying from appendectomy, could Carroll pass these glaring facts and not perceive that something must be wrong? How could he, as a doctor, fail to understand that all his misery and these disorders indicate a shifting of the body from its original course? Even a layman knows that if a machine fails to perform efficiently at certain work, that failure is evidence that the machine is asked to do what it was not made to do. I mean, why do we even fart when we eat? That's clearly, there is clearly an inefficiency there. Why? Because it's not natural. It's not natural to eat. Otherwise, you wouldn't fart. If it was natural to eat, it wouldn't matter how much you ate because it would just be perfect. You wouldn't feel a thing. You wouldn't feel a pain. You wouldn't feel a slight thing. You wouldn't have a single fart or a single burp. The very fact that we even fart and burp the minute we eat and we start to feel discomfort here. Even if you eat little, you still feel some discomfort. You still feel it. At some level, there's discomfort. It means it's not natural. It's not supposed to be happening. It's a breaking of cosmic laws. That's what it is. It's a straining away from purity, which is the perfect Breatharian state. Let thy fart be your evidence. Every time you fart, just be like, why am I farting? What is this? There's an inefficiency going on here. And funny thing, what do you know? You stop eating, you go on a water fast or even a juice fast. And it's like a few days, I mean, you start to fart in the beginning because the body's cleaning up the waste. But then after like 2 or 3 days, you're like, man, I don't think I have farted in like 48 hours. You know, it's like, yeah, of course, because you're not really supposed to eat. It's unnatural. That's why you're farting. The machine is inefficient because you're asking for it what it's not designed to do, what it only adapted to do, and then in its adaptation, there was far too much cost. You know, far too much cost just to adapt, just to give you the longest maximum survivability under these horrendous conditions, which are known as eating. So, where are we here? So obvious, guys, so obvious. Supreme intelligence equipped the body in its physical beginning with all the structures that it would ever need under all reasonable circumstances. It was made perfect and complete, but it seems that man has strayed even further from the true path of life than was ever anticipated by the omniscient creator. Modern man has the rudimentary breast of the female. In some cases, they are functional, as such men can nurse babies, as shown by Clemens in his Science of Regeneration. Right, why do we have nipples here? Because according to Hitima, his take on this is that the creator, that is really you at the end of the day. The creator created you. You know, they say we're created in the light of God, right? In a state of total perfection, given certain tools in case you ever needed them. So like we have nipples as men have nipples in case they ever need to nurse babies. In case, like that's, you know, so you're equipped even for worst case scenario, right? So that's his take on it. I don't know. It's a little bit, for me, there's some loopholes in my mind about it. Okay, but nevertheless, that's his take. So his take is, we have the digestive system in case we ever need it. Now, my take on this is a little different. My take on this is we have the digestive system as means to experience if we ever wanted, because life is an experience. Everything is an experience of God, of consciousness. So if we ever wanted to taste something, then we can taste it. We can taste it in the digestive system, which has many other functions other than digesting food, breaking down food, can also act. It's sort of a hybrid, can act as a way for you to, after you taste something, to get rid of it. Essentially, that's why you shit it out. You get rid of it. So you see something, a piece of fruit, and you like you smell a flower. It's an experience. There's no end result, just flower. So you, banana. Oh, it tastes like this. And then the body, I guess the digestive system, which has many other functions, says, okay, you experience the taste. Now let me get rid of this because it doesn't belong here. So it gets rid of it. Digestive system just gets rid of the poison that you put in, which is the food, the toxin, the drug. And it can also do that for heroin and for cocaine. and for many other things that we all agreed are toxic, but for some reason we still didn't agree that food is toxic also. Remember, the body can also process cocaine and heroin. Does that mean they're optimal for you? Does that mean you should shoot heroin every day and sniff cocaine every day? They're all experiences. My take on this is different than Hutima's. It's just we have this digestive system for many other functions because the intestines can store energy. You can take it from prana and store it. You see, that's why you empty the cup and then you could pour in water, empty the intestines, and then the intestines can begin to pull prana and store the energy. They even talk about that in Taoism. They call it the state of Bigu, Breatharianism, and they talk about the intestines storing energy. So the digestive system in its original creation, I guess, in its original state was doing other stuff, but it could also get rid of toxic substances such as food, cocaine, heroin, alcohol. It can get rid of it also. So it's not a way to digest food and give you energy. It's a way of getting rid of the toxin. You see, so it's actually there to get rid of, because God wants to experience everything. God wants to experience taste. God wants to experience cocaine. God wants to experience heroin. So my take is a little different than Hutima, but that's his take. So let's keep going. He also shows that the male glands of generation appear in rudimentary form in women and vice versa. Interesting. These rudimentary structures represent changes that have occurred in the body through the ages because of changed conditions. So I guess when we started eating and it started to happen generation after generation, our digestive system began to adapt to primarily serving as a way of digesting food, which is just a fancy way of saying getting rid of toxins. As a breatharian, man had all the organs, both functional and functionless, developed and underdeveloped, that he would ever need as he drifted down the stream of degeneration. He fell from the plane of perfection by becoming a drinker of fluid and a consumer of food, thus creating unnatural wants and desires that have dragged him down to misery and despair. He had become extinct but for the provision of an omniscient creator who provided him with rudimentary structures for just emergencies. So again, Hutima's take on it is these are for emergencies. These the way in which your organs can digest food. Again, my take on it is just to process an experience. That's all. In the same way that cocaine is processed and alcohol is processed, and then the poison is flushed out, food is the same thing. Would love to have a chat with Hutima on this, but maybe we'll do that in the astral. As the rudimentary organs were needed and commanded into use by new conditions, new environment, and new habits, they responded to the command and developed to a functional degree. Thus, the body changed instead of dying. Huxley and Darwin declared that the rudimentary organs in men and women are the remains of structures that have been better developed in an earlier state of human existence. They are the anatomical remains of what has been and are used by modern biologists in tracking lines of descent with modifications and in determining probable ancestry. In lesson number 7 appears the story of a woman who is working back into breatharianism. She said, I have passed the eating stage and could not eat even if I desired. Yeah, I know this feel. If I fast on liquids, water, or even juices, after a few days, even if I desire to eat something, I don't really want to eat it. Last time I did a liquid, just liquids, it lasted 9 days, and it's funny because even on the 9th day, I was like, man, I think I'm overeating solids. I don't like it. Just didn't make sense. Even if like a picture of a piece of bread or something pops up, I'm like, dense. But we're addicts, right? We're dealing with a lifetime addiction. So I start to eat because I went on a plane ride and they offered us food, and I was like, it smells good, the addiction. And then I ate it a little bit, and I could only eat a little, very little. Then I went to the hotel. There was some food there, and I ate it. And again, same thing. I could only eat a little. And then I went back into the addiction. By like day 4, day 5, I was eating like I usually would again. You see, but it's true. If you go on any fast, water is the best. After a few days, you're like, man, even if a picture pops up, you're like, man, I don't want to eat. Like, it's so dense because you get in this lighter state. It feels wonderful. It's time for me for another liquid fast. Okay. So, I have passed the eating stage and could not eat even if I desired, as my digestive apparatus has changed considerably and is now unable to handle any fiber at all. Yeah. Because it has no work to do, this woman's alimentary tract is shrinking back to its original rudimentary state as it was before man began to eat. And that's exactly how it feels. You do just a fast on liquids alone. Water the best, but liquids, maybe fruit juices. You will know by the 3rd, 4th day, if you pick up something solid and eat it, you can only need very little. Because you're like, man, that's it. Like, that's enough. Because your stomach is like the size of a fist. You know, it's like, that's enough. It shrinks back to its original state. In the beginning, the alimentary tract was rudimentary, as are the mammary glands now on a man's breast, and it reverts to its original condition when men, by not eating, gives it a chance to change back. These are some of the changes in the body to which Carol referred but failed to describe. For the body, it is either change or perish. It is either adaptation or expiration. So the body meets the emergencies by making the necessary changes, but Carol was too materialistic to use his mind and find within the kingdom of God. The facts he needed to aid him in discovering and describing how and what ways the body has changed. The body, being subject to changes, can change in practicality all directions to meet many emergencies and survive, even the changes that decrease its efficiency and diminish its duration. The body can change to meet adverse conditions, and it can also change to meet favorable conditions. These changes are possible because of organic and functional changes within the body. As the organs change, their functions must change to corresponding degree. To describe these changes definitely and in detail would require observations covering thousands of years. Some surprising changes can occur in one generation, as where a man turns into a woman and vice versa. If a man can change to a woman so completely as to become the mother of a baby, or a woman can change to a man and become the father of a child, as Clemens shows in his Signs of Regeneration, then it should not seem so surprising or impossible that a Breatharian can change to a Gluterian and vice versa. Yeah. As a man becomes a woman, as sexual changes occur because of organic and functional changes taking place within the body, so a Breatharian becomes a Gluterian for the same reason. The sex glands of a body of a 9 or 10-year-olds of age are in rudimentary stage as a rule and not competent to function in a productive degree. But as they are commanded into use by the boy's habits, they respond and he becomes competent to produce offspring. The press of July 15, 1951 reported the case of a 10-year-old girl who gave birth to a 7-pound son. The doctor said the baby was perfectly normal. When similar reports come out of India, we in the USA think it's terrible, but when it occurs in our own country, it's winked at and forgotten. Prejudice is a powerful influence. Okay, that's lesson number 5. Very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. For me, the takeaway from this is, again, why do we have a digestive system? Because it's a common question that comes up that you should definitely ask. And so there are many answers. Again, my answer is a little different than Hotima's. Obviously, we can agree that there are other primary functions that got replaced by eating. And again, the intestines can store energy. This is in the Taoists are aware of this. So when the Taoists look to reach the state of Bigu, the state of Breatharianism, they one of the visualizations they do is they visualize a big ball of energy. That's a Kamehameha from Dragon Ball. And they visualize energy being stored in the intestines, in the intestinal area, as they go on to do their fasting and essentially weaning themselves off the food drug. So the intestines store energy. But of course, as you subject it to just eating, its primary function now becomes to get rid of the toxicity. The body's always looking to get itself off toxins. That's first priority. because it's always trying to get back to the homeostasis, the perfect state. So anyway, Hutima says that it's there for emergency. I say it's there just to experience. So in the same way that you can process cocaine to experience what it's like, process psychedelics to experience what it's like, process heroin to experience what it's like, alcohol, same thing with food. And that digestive system can also act as a way to get rid of toxins. So perhaps the purpose of the digestive system is to get rid of toxins, period, and store energy. Store energy and then get rid of toxins. Any obstructions, get rid of obstructions. Food happening to be one of them. Major obstruction now. So the next lesson is really, really interesting. Hutima argues, and I sense some truth, and I think I will read it next because I'm really, really intrigued. Yeah, it's actually not even that long, so I'll read it next video. It's quite short actually. Yeah, let's go on. We'll read lesson 6 in the next video. So let's go. See you guys in the next video.